We talked a couple weeks ago about CPR Classic and the millions of dollars that they have stolen from their clients. I'm not even going to say allegedly anymore because, I mean, their doors are closed, they are shut down, and the stories that are coming out are many and terrible. And after the story, I actually heard from a couple of my customers who had active lawsuits and or judgments against CPR Classics, and the stories were awful. One of them is owed $600,000 by CPR.
Wow.
He sent them a car for restoration or for some work to get done, and they sold it. The other customer, the opposite thing, he bought a car with a restoration. Turns out the car wasn't even for sale. It was somebody else's car, and they sent him fake photos of the restoration being done, and it wasn't actually being done.
Oh.
It was still in parts, and he ended up helping the actual owner of the car like get the parts out of there before the whole place got shut down. But he has a judgment against them, which is worth the paper that it's printed on, unfortunately. But it's just bad. It's terrible. So anyway, we thought, okay, well, how do you protect yourself against these kinds of scams, right? So a lot of people said, wow, that's a consignment business model. It's a scam. No, it is an easy formula for a scam, certainly. But it is not. There's plenty of very reputable consignment dealers out there. The only time it becomes a scam is when the dealers spend more money than they make and start using your money to do other things, or using your money to try to make more money by essentially leveraging that float or your vehicle title to get loans to buy inventory, thinking, oh, we can like essentially make more money than just the consignment cars we have here. There was a dealer up in Mentor, Best of Show, I think, that was accused of doing exactly that. A friend of mine was working there when the FBI showed up, and yeah, they were, I think, basically taking consignment cars, using their titles to get floor plan money as if they owned them, and then using that floor plan money to buy different cars.
Oof.
Great game if it works, if you make money on all of them. But
the problem is with all this stuff, as soon as one card falls, everything goes with it.
Correct.
It's so risky.
The other problem, and this was from a commenter on the video, I thought this was incredibly profound, because again, it's not that hard to make money in this business. Like, you got to kind of try to lose a lot of money to pull off a scheme like this and owe people millions and millions of dollars. The problem that he identified, I think is right, is that most of these dealers try to live the same lifestyle as their clients. I think that's right dead on the money. And even if you look at CPR Classics, one of the family was racing fancy Porsches at a high level, and that is an incredibly expensive hobby. So again, if you try to keep up with your clients, like, you just can't. There isn't enough money in this business typically. The old saying goes, sell to the classes, eat with the masses, sell to the masses, eat with the classes. So if you're selling to extremely rich people, likely you're not going to have the same lifestyle as they are. But if you're around it all the time, it's addictive. You think you are deserving of that lifestyle, entitled to it. And yeah, that's the beginning of the end. Anyway, let's talk about some ways you can protect yourself, maybe against getting screwed by consignment dealers. One, check out their online reviews. It's decent. It's not perfect, but if you filter by most recent, it only takes one really bad one to go, there may be something awry here.
Well, and I think, too, something to call out is, when you're looking for restaurants and you see somebody leave a 1 star and it's just like, wow, the server was slow and didn't, like, okay, you can ignore those. If you're looking at a car dealership where you're spending thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, take the 1 star seriously if they seem to have any sort of meat to them.
Yeah, read it, though.
Yes.
Why?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Read it why. Don't just ignore,
Yep. The difficult part is I've heard of dealers threatening or enticing their clients monetarily to remove those reviews, essentially paying them off. So that's not perfect either. But if you find one, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. That may be the tip of the iceberg. So forums, the forums are great. People will air their grievances there. And a lot of times it's not like I got screwed. It's more of a soft, is anyone else having this experience? I've had a little bit of trouble. Been, some delays and stuff. I'm not sure. So take those. Those are big red flags, because I've seen a lot of stuff on forums early on before it became really public. So that's a good early way to find out whether or not people have had good experiences. Additionally, you could post there. And a lot of times people will DM you because they don't want to get sued for defamation or whatever. So they're not going to post it publicly. But if there's shady stuff going on, you will get messages.
Well, that's what I was saying, is like you can message somebody who seems to have a weird problem, and you can kind of talk together and share maybe more privately over a phone call, and who knows what information you'll get at that point. Absolutely. Ask for references. And for references of people that have done transactions within the last 60 days, right? It doesn't matter how long a company's been around or how long you've done business with them personally. They are only as good as their last 60 days, right? Bernie Madoff made a lot of people a lot of money for a long time before that money ceased to exist. So you want fresh, recent transactions. Did you sell a car with them last week? Yes. Are you paid? Yes. Okay. Probably a good indicator that that's okay. If you can get lender references, that's great, because they're typically the front line of when things are going wrong. They are the first people not to get paid, because banks and lenders are not going to spew it all over the internet. They're just going to file a civil lawsuit, and that's going to take a bunch of time, and nobody's going to find out about it. But if you have industry connections in order to actually find out what lender they're using, because like CNC Exotics, long before anything hit the internet, Next Gear Capital, who held their floor plan, went in and repoed all their cars. Somebody knew about that, and that started the rumors. So that was a very early indicator that there was something wrong. You can play detective, county, state, court search for civil cases, look up the Secretary of State to look at their business status, call the DMV, check for complaints, stuff like that. Be your own detective. Again, lawsuits on this type of thing are typically delayed because that's people's last line of defense, but it's certainly something you can check and owner and check their history. Maybe they have a different company and they screwed other people over. So check their personal lawsuit history as well, not just this particular company that they happen to have. Now, if you're selling, don't give them the title until you have cash in hand. I mean, wire transfer cash, not a check, not a tracking number of a check, wire transfer only, because CPR Classics sent people checks that bounced. They sent people tracking numbers that were fake. They sent people empty envelopes. Wait, did they empty envelopes?
Yes.
What?
Yes. So did CNC Exotics.
Wild.
Yeah. If you do get screwed, if you are not paid within 14 days, take legal and regulatory action immediately. I can't stress this enough. So many people give bad people so much time to try to make it right. And you give up your chances of recourse by waiting too long, right? And I think you're also screwing over future clients, right? And I think it's ultimately because people hold out hope. And I think it's selfish because people will say well, if I don't make it public, the company will keep doing business and I'll get paid. But that money, you're getting paid with somebody else's money. And I think people know that. They just don't want to be the one that gets screwed.
Yeah, they're like, well, if somebody else, it's not my fault if somebody else gets screwed.
Yeah, but if you know, you know. And not saying something publicly or taking immediate legal action is allowing the fraud to continue. And, in any lawsuit, typically, like bad situation like this, the earlier you get in and get your claim in, the more likely you'll get something out of it. So don't wait. Don't buy people's excuses. If your car is sold, you should be paid in a week or two. Just that's it. That's it. A couple notes. So Sports Car Market covered the article here about CPR Classic, and the author of this article went into some safe practices to do when you're buying or selling a car. And they talked about using an attorney for an escrow. They talked about essentially, if it's consignment, don't do the deal with the dealer. Ask them to do it with the customer directly, with the seller directly. You exchange funds with them and then pay the consigning dealer separately their commission. Again, use an attorney for an escrow, and don't have the attorney release the funds until you have the title. In theory, that's good, but it's not necessarily practical. For one, there are some laws that prohibit consignment dealers from backing out of the transaction, from allowing the parties to do it individually. By law, the consignment dealer has to do the transaction. So they'd be in violation of their state laws if they do that. Two, in Ohio, we have to physically put the title into our name and then transfer the title in Ohio to the buyer. So waiting for somebody to pay us until we've put the title in their name, like that could take a couple weeks. We have to float the money for the consignor. We have to pay them, obviously, because they want to be protected. We got to give them their money to get the title. Then we got to flip it into the buyer's name. That means the buyer has the car and the title in their name, and we're not paid.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's an escrow. We legally have to get paid, but I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, yes, these are things you should do in an ideal world to protect yourself, but a lot of dealers are not going to go along with that stuff, and for good reason.
Yeah. I mean, like, so I'm thinking over here, is there any way, like, does a dealer have to disclose that they're consigning a vehicle? Could they not?
It's not in their benefit to hide that they are.
Okay.
We're open about it. And, we'll send people a copy of the title and all the documentation they require. But we're not sending out a title before we get paid. So
for sure.
Yeah, it's ultimately there has to be some level of trust. But the biggest thing is do your due diligence before you do the transaction. And escrow is not necessarily the best way for all parties. It might be the best way for the buyer. But if you have to use an escrow, you didn't do your homework properly. It's kind of my opinion about it. Because if somebody comes to us and says, I want to do an escrow, it's just, no, not happening. Not happening. Well, speaking of scams, let's check out the Scaminator and see what we can find. There's a for sale ad on Marketplace, and we're going to try to figure out if this is a scam or not.
Alrighty, Doug. This is for a 2022 Toyota Highlander. Much newer than stuff we normally talk about.
Yeah, my wife found this one. She's car shopping.
There it is. It comes out. LE Sport Utility, 4-door. Thank you. Description. Notes title showing not actually, but it is actually mile because when I bought it, it was stationary. So the insurance company, they don't turn it on to figure the mile. That's all I got.
That's a whole description.
Mm-hmm. Oh, $27,000. I don't know if that's reasonable or not for one of these.
Okay, so title. Well, I don't know if this is a scam per se, but it's definitely shady. So, one, you got to read into it. I mean, tell us something else about the car, right? Like something you do want to know, not just apologize for the TMU title. If it came from an insurance company, that probably means it was wrecked previously. So I would be less worried about the non-actual mileage title than about what happened to the car.
Yeah.
So I did actually look up the VIN on Epic VIN, and it showed the previous auction sale.
Okay.
And it showed that the car had been rear-ended. I was fully expecting this thing to be a rebuilt title car because that's the only reason the insurance company would sell it at auction. It was not. It was actually fairly minor damage. It was a clean title other than the non-actual mileage brand. And in these photos, there was a photo of the odometer. The car was on. So that whole thing about insurance companies not turning the car on is not true. I think somebody just made a clerical error, and but
that's weird.
Definitely a red flag there, thinking it should be a salvage title or it might be a scam. This one is not actually a scam. He's like kind of right. It might might be a half decent buy.
But you're like
just
coming
have
out
a
of the
clueless
gate.
seller.
Yeah, you're coming out of the gate with an excuse. It's not like, here's why this car is good. Here's why it's a deal. It's not, the title's weird. Here's why.
If it was a Porsche on Marketplace, they would tell you all about all the options and how rare it was and how amazing. And they're such a great owner. And then at the bottom, a little footnote, it was a non-actual miles title.
Yeah, it's like, just hand wave that away. Shove it under the rug.
This episode is brought to you by Sheffield All Sport Watches. The Sheffield brand was recently revived by Jay Turkbus, an owner of an original Sheffield All Sport diver he received from his parents in 1970 when he was just 11, beginning his love of watches. As an adult, Jay used his extensive expertise in product development and marketing to revive the brand that started it all. He set out to develop watches with a high level of quality and specification at a value price. His first effort, and a successful one in July of 2023, was the debut of the Sheffield All Sport Diver 1. It had the kind of build and movement that much more expensive watches use, and his debut price of $108 was equivalent to the $13 his parents paid back in 1970. Since that debut, Sheffield has expanded to a wider range of automatics and chronos, many designed around vintage Sheffield dials of the 60s. The Sheffield well of clever and unique design remains his inspiration, as well as maintaining the goal of high quality, very affordable range of automatic and quartz watches. Sheffield watches, value on merit, not just price. I love mine. Get yours at SheffieldWatches.com and mention that you heard about them on Switchcast. Thank you for joining us for Switchcast with Doug Tabbitt and Tyler Sanders, produced by Ethan Huffnagel. Switchcast is an automotive entertainment and opinion show, and nothing we say should be taken very seriously. We do not give tax, investment, legal, emotional, or professional advice, and the only licenses we hold are driver's licenses. The opinions expressed on this show are exclusively held by the people pontificating at that moment and do not reflect the values of our producers or sponsors. Our theme music is provided by Emily and Ivory. You can stream their full album on Spotify or SoundCloud. If you like this show, you can stream it in its entirety on your favorite audio podcast platform. Check out switchcast.live for more info.